Is designer clothing overpriced for no reason? Honestly, sometimes yes. Today's case study is about a multi-$1,000 dress worn by a celebrity versus something that you could get from your local mall for about $100. I purchased this Balenciaga dress from The RealReal. It's the same model worn by Kim Kardashian to the 2022 Vanity Fair Oscars after party, although hers is probably custom judging by how well it fits her. It was also worn by Kelsey Ballerini and Mackenzie Porter. Yes, they accidentally bought the same dress to the 2022 Country Music Awards. And then I also have this dupe version from Zara. As you can see, it's not a knockoff. There are some quite significant differences. However, it is still obviously reminiscent of the Balenciaga dress in terms of silhouette. So let's get into it. We're gonna start by talking about fabrics. I'm so sorry, but the Zara fabric is trash. The knit is so loose that you could see the outline of the apartment building across the street from me through the dress when you hold it up to the window. There's so much space between the threads that the fabric has a very high risk of snagging against objects, which can cause rips and holes, as we can see in the skirt here. The Balenciaga fabric is obviously better quality, it's heftier and much more tightly knit, meaning the risk of snags, pilling, or ripping is greatly diminished. However, the fiber content is mostly polyamide. Polyamide in this context is a synthetic fabric, nylon is a common form of it. The polyamide fibers that made up this dress are apparently recycled from things like fishing nets and carpet fluffs, whatever that is. And you know what? That's great. Like, I am glad that those fishing nets are not in the ocean. However, this type of fabric is not very expensive. So for the price of the dress, remember, it's like several $1,000s retail value, you might expect it to be a finer fabric. The part that's really egregious to me about this Balenciaga dress is the seam finishes. If you look inside the neckline here, you see the neck seam is just stitched down, leaving the uneven raw edge out. They did not even attempt to trim it nicely, it's just there in all its jagged glory. And this long train was not hemmed, it was just left completely raw. Now because it's a knit fabric, it doesn't strictly need to be hemmed because knits don't unravel the way wovens do. However, the edges could kind of become fluffy from the friction of dragging on the floor, which could create a risk of snagging and ripping. But it's like a $2,000 or $3,000 dress and they just didn't hem it. Even the Zara dress has a hem of some sort. It looks like a narrow raised rib knit band or something that goes all the way around the skirt, and then there's a regular knit at the bottom that just curls up. So not an extravagant hem by any means, and I mean technically the edge is still raw, but at least they did something. The seams inside the skirt of the Balenciaga dress are also not finished, which, like, again, it's not strictly necessary to finish the seams on a knit fabric, but it just looks cheap because you clearly didn't put in any effort to make it look pretty. Also, let's talk about the seaming, like the actual sewing, for a second. There are so many popped seams on this dress, I was actually quite shocked. Now, I did buy the dress secondhand, so this is not strictly Balenciaga's fault. However, it does beg the question of whether Balenciaga should have used a different thread or different type of stitch that would withstand stretching better. And that's not the only stitching problem. At the cuffs, we see there was some kind of tension problem, the stitches are very uneven, and the serging on the inside has a lot of loose threads. This is all very astounding and, in my opinion, frankly unacceptable for a multi-$1,000 designer dress. As an aside, there are also some stains on the dress, which is obviously not Balenciaga's fault, but I'm like, why did The RealReal list this as very good quality on their site? Now, the Balenciaga dress does shine a little bit more when we look at the construction of the top of the dress. There is this metal hardware to do up the dress in the back, which looks like decent quality to me. There are these silicone grippy bands all around the back cutouts so that it sticks to your skin and doesn't fall everywhere. And you see this underbust seam? Well, when you look at it from the inside, there's a built-in bodysuit that is attached there. This may sound like an odd comment, but I really like the construction of the underwear part. In particular, these chain stitches right here on the seam allowance. In my opinion, they could have done that on the seam allowance of the inside of the skirt as well to make it look a bit more polished. But anyway, you can also see these bust darts in the front, which help give the bodice some shape, and I really like them. Because knit fabrics are naturally stretchy, many knit items of clothing do not have darts. The Zara dress doesn't, for instance. However, they can be nice to have in some cases because the fabric doesn't have to stretch out and recover quite as much, and when done well, I think they look classy. The Zara dress's construction is comparatively quite simple. It's a basic sheath dress, there are no darts, although it does have this swag of fabric sewn into the side seam around the stomach area, which I assume is to add some opacity to the pelvic area, and I think it is also a bit more flattering and looks classier to have that extra layer there than just a skin-tight bodycon dress in a cheap fabric. Something that is interesting about this dress is that they didn't sew the hem or sew on the collar. It looks like a knitting machine did different types of stitches depending on what part of the dress was being knitted, so that's kind of cool. All in all, the Zara dress is about what I would expect from Zara. The fabric is pretty terrible, but the construction in and of itself is simple but alright. Although I guess it doesn't really matter if the construction is good if the fabric is terrible, because the dress will likely still become unwearable quite quickly due to holes in the fabric. Now, the Balenciaga dress, on the other hand, was extremely disappointing for an item that cost thousands of dollars new and that comes from a heritage house that built its reputation on quality. Cristobal Balenciaga apparently used to personally check each and every item that left his atelier, and between the terrible seaming and the lack of seam finishes on this dress, I'm sure he would be properly horrified if he were to come back to life and lay eyes on it. Anyway, that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.